this. So, welcome to another episode of Threads of Enlightenment. We have a couple of people that I've been wanting to get a chance to chat with for a while. But I want to thank them first because I know they're coming with a couple of things I deem very expensive. Time. What a commodity. Every one of us have been given 24 hours. What we do with our time will tell us a lot about who you are. One must learn to respect it. One must learn to love it, appreciate it, the beauty that is time. The other is the journey. The journey housed powerful information that created them who they are today. And so we are honored that they are here to come and share both of this precious commodity with us here at Threads of Enlightenment, that we may become enlightened as we hear their journey. Thank you guys for coming to our show today.
Thanks for having us, Ken. It's great.
Yeah, thank you.
It is an honor. Introduce yourself to the audience and tell them how do you serve, because I tell people that is just a snapshot of the person's life now, but it came from somewhere. Introduce yourself and tell them.
Yeah, my name is Freddy Zental Weaver, and this is my partner and beloved and wife, Dr. Elsbeth Meuth. We are founders and directors of TantraNova Institute here in Chicago, which we founded about 23 years ago now. And we teach practices of how to work with creating your life with ease, grace, and flow in your most authentic self. And we do that through using practices of one of the original energetic yogas of Tantra, using and working with the altered state of the sexual energetic that happens, and some of the approaches to transformation from the West in terms of generative language, how we create our reality and language, creative self-discovery, how we discover aspects of ourselves, uncover aspects of ourselves, and creative movement, music, and art. And we've been doing that with all kinds of people all over the world for the last 23 years, couples and singles, watching them grow towards what they most deeply desire. And it's an ongoing process, but you can do it. And yes, you can do
it. It is the awakening, as I tell people. So how we do it, we like to go back as a custom here. And we call it the first space by which we reside for a short time. We call that space family. That place is where we began to receive some of our instructions, our programming, if you will, that will cause us to govern our lives, and based on the programming that we got, the instructions, the information, we will then have a perception of the world, and then we're going to begin to walk on our journey. I want to talk to you guys on an individual basis because your work is such a profound work that you do as a team. But you guys came from different perspective, if you will, and you were able to merge. And so we're interested in that as to what was your family like, Elsbeth, when you were a young girl within that family growing? What was that unit like?
Yeah, so I'm one of 10 children, was born and raised in Germany. And I had a very strict father, military father. And so there was not much room for me, given that I was really free and, like a butterfly.
Yeah.
To express that. And then particularly when I moved into puberty, it was, I think I was a little bit too much for my parents. So anyway, and I just did what I wanted, although I always did it with great suffering. So anyway, I came to the United States in my late 20s to do postgraduate work in music, and then stayed on, and a few years later got my doctorate in education. And then I moved into management consulting. So I had gotten really good in the consulting field. That was in the 90s. However, I felt very despaired about relationship, intimate relationship. I had this pattern of attracting unavailable men. And while that was exciting at times, most of the time I was alone.
Yeah.
And I remember this moment when it hit me that I could see the trajectory if I were not going to change this pattern of attracting and availability, that I would end up without lasting intimacy and love in my life before I would leave this planet. And I didn't want to settle for that. And that was a decisive moment when I said to myself, Elsbeth, whatever you need to do, go do it. Find out what's in the
Yeah.
way. What is that you attract unavailability? I knew there was something, but I couldn't put my finger on it, so I couldn't change it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that was the time when I started to study Tantra seriously, like as a discipline, a practice, not just, reading a book here and there. And Ken, it was so impactful. It was life-changing for me because what I experienced and found in the healing process of the tantric practice, where we tap into our physical self, emotional self, mental self, spiritual self, the whole being, I discovered that I had held distrust towards men. And while I was not a distrusting bitch at that time, if you had known me, I was very charming and inviting and reeled the guys in. But underneath, what's not visible to the mere eye, cannot be perceived by the conscious mind, underneath all of that was a measure of distrust. And it came all back to me in the healing process. It was like this moment when I remembered the 18-year-old Elsbeth, first love, first boyfriend. We had a beautiful, blissful relationship. And then one day he asked me to have intercourse. And I agreed, although I was not ready for it. And it was freakingly painful. I had to go to the gynecologist, and the bill went to my house. My dad opened it. All hell broke loose. He called me a whore. The boyfriend left the relationship a few weeks later, and there I was, all by myself, no soul to turn to. And in my despair, I made this nanosecond decision, like this is a kind of decision that we make in order to cope with a difficult situation. And for me, it was something like, see, Elsbeth, men are not there for you when you really need them. And while that was so at the time with my dad and the boyfriend, that trailed me into my young adulthood and into my adulthood. And it was no wonder that I attracted unavailability, because that was further proof of, see, Elsbeth, men are not there when you really need them. It is very curious how we then create unconsciously situations that actually support this original decision. So it's like a circle. You cannot even step out of it. However, by tapping deep into my cellular being, because the tantric practice really goes to the cellular being of oneself, where we remember, not consciously remember, but viscerally remember. And that is where the clearing occurred, where the opening happened. And it was like opening a valve. When we open a valve, there is the steam getting more intense first. So for me, it was like the pain of the 18-year-old, the physical pain, the emotional pain that came back in that moment of that healing ritual intensely. And then just like the steam after a while fizzles out, that intensity of pain, physical and emotional pain, fizzled out. And in place, what opened up was deeper trust, first in myself, because that often goes first, like, why did I let this happen? Why didn't I speak up? I cannot even trust myself.
Yeah.
So deeper trust in myself, then trust in men in general. And 6 months later, Freddy Zental came into my life. And Ken, I'm sure if I hadn't done that clearing work, I would not have recognized him as a potential partner
I
because
agree.
he was available. If I hadn't
Yeah.
been available, it wouldn't have been an attraction. So it was quite
Yes.
miraculous.
That is a beautiful story. And those that are listening, I hope that you gather some information, some insight as she was talking about it. I always tell people that life is a series of decisions. When we are in our trauma, we will make a decision that will govern our life. And then one day we will see that that doesn't serve us anymore. And it's time to heal. And when the revelation comes, we began to see, as you state clearly, once you see clearly, you make another decision. Is the healing? I need to get that. And then you got it. And Freddie walked in. Now, Freddie, talk to us about your family. Here you are. They said, that everyone, as we grow in our family, this is where we learn about love and all these other things, and that they say we should learn. But we also
Mm.
learn other lessons within that family. Introduce us to your family and how was it?
Yeah, thanks, Ken. Yeah, Elsbeth's story is so perfect in terms of illustrating how these practices can shift something so deeply held for us as a belief.
Yeah,
My journey in this tantric work started very early. I was 13 years old, living in Hawaii, going through my puberty. My father at the time was a practicing psychiatrist and took pity on me and gave me a book to read on how to integrate sex and meditation, sexual meditation. Wow, I loved it. My girlfriend loved it. And even more than that, I had this idea going into my freshman year in high school to go on to college on athletic scholarship. But living in Hawaii at that time I had a belief that I couldn't get the training, the exposure to get recognized to do that. It was a belief. So the
yeah,
practices assisted me to get beyond what I believed was so, to believe a new story. And I did all the things that you do to go on to college on athletic scholarship, went on to college. After college, I kept doing these practices and applying these principles in my personal relationships. I was in the software business for many years in San Francisco. And at the beginning, it was fun, exciting, and new. And after about 15 years, it was just a job. So knowing what I knew about my own enrollment, engagement in life, I was looking for a reinvigoration of, my engagement.
yeah,
So there was an opportunity in Chicago. They hired me, moved me here. That was 23 years ago. I was single, online, looking for a Shakti, a female Tantra partner. And
yeah,
Elsbeth showed up. And I call it 6 months to the day, we transcended what I call the romantic drama and created TantraNova. She had
yeah,
done a 2-year program in Maui to teach this certification. And I did the same program in addition to other stuff I had learned. And we put our program together. And we have thusly, over the last 23 years, worked all over the world with couples and singles of all ethnicities and economic and educational levels. And we can see that these practices are very powerful. So many approaches there are to getting actionable insights about what we're doing to create something different. But very few teach how to really shift at a very deep level that belief and how to work consciously with sexual energy. We teach a
yeah,
very specific kind of sexual meditation that doesn't circumvent or take away from all the other things we do with sex for fun and creating life and so on. But learning to work with it as in the altered state of what happens in that energetic aliveness at low levels and high levels, that intimacy, that creativity, endorphin, serotonin, oxytocin chemically were changed, emotionally more loving, open, vulnerable. It's an altered state. When we bring consciousness in that altered state, in terms of what we teach in terms of distinctions of breath awareness, energy awareness, and intention, like I want to create a beloved in my life or work that's fulfilling or a place that's inspiring or whatever it might be, we get more connected beyond the veil of consciousness into our subconscious neurosynaptic memory and so on, to begin to get out of our own way, if you will, to then move with grace, ease, and flow towards what we most deeply desire. And that's more than just a conversation. It's really, we've seen it happen time and time again with people of all levels of meditation practice, get what they've come out to create getting in their life. It's where we look into the world. It's like like you were saying, we have these actionable, these experiences in our life that are deep, like Elsbeth shared about when she was young and this traumatic experience, and in her conscious, she said there was no good men, couldn't trust men.
Yeah.
And then as she got older, she believed she wanted to create a relationship, but in the background, unconsciously, was still that belief. And so how do you get to that? Even when you do the therapeutic left brain analytical stuff and you get, oh, that's why, it makes sense. It all lines up, yet deeply, deeply, deeply rooted, like the color of our eyes almost, these beliefs live. So to get to that is where we work with where this sexual energy leads us in terms of this intimate vulnerability.
Yeah, that is a powerful journey that you guys have, because it is the soul. We have the two parts of us that makes the decision, the conscious and the subconscious. And the subconscious will guide us. We make that consciously, as Elsbeth said she did. And then it resides, it lives there in the subconscious and becomes hidden, if you will. And then we have to go on the journey to discover it. So here you are, 6 months after you made your confession, if you will. And you guys came out, boom, you had this encounter, if you will. I call it, it's reading all your stuff. I'm like, that is an enchanted meeting.
Yeah, it was really wonderful.
Us right there. Take me right to that day, at that meeting right there, guys. Talk to us. How did that come about? What were the circumstances that brought it? And when it happened, what happened?
Well, Elsbeth had already committed to creating a tantric, institution here in Chicago, and I was in a crux where I really did not want to do what I was doing anymore, and I knew that. And knowing Elsbeth, knowing what I knew and what she was interested in creating more of, we again just went with the chaos of creativity. It's like you said, it's like a boom, like the universe expanding. Creativity is chaotic, which is what scares most people, but breathing through it. And, 2 months, we started our work and we went 2 years and really didn't make any money after 2 years, to the day we started, paying for itself after we had invested our resources into it. And people were responding and we kept expanding. And I tell you, Ken, it's been the most satisfying thing I could ever be doing in my life.
Yeah, and really believing that this is what we wanted to do, no matter what. I had left the consulting firm and I got invitations during those 2 years to come back on a project. And it was very tempting, I mean, I was doing some consulting on the side still, which was great because it was paying well. So, working a day a week or 2 or 3 days a month. And then we could work on TantraNova. But there was a time when really the belief carried us through it. Because before we can see the fruit, we put the investment in the energy that needs to be driven by, yes, this is what we want to do, no matter what. So I didn't follow the temptation and went back on a consulting project. We just stayed with TantraNova, and then it opened up further and further, And now, as Freddy said, we have been teaching all over the world with, individuals, couples,
corporate groups.
I mean, and it is so, it's so heartwarming what's possible because that was my initial wish. When I came out of my own letting go of the past, having had this clearing, into new possibility that I want to share this with other women. If that is possible for me, it's possible for others as well. And then when Freddy came into my life, then he's working also with men only, both privately and in workshops. And then we do the couples work, and we have co-ed workshops that are open to couples and singles. So when someone comes as a single, they pay up with a practice partner. That is how I started out when I entered the world of Tantra and learned. And it was so, so helpful because I truly prepared myself for the beloved to come into my life so that I was the frequency, that I was the opening, that was the invitation, instead of being beleaguered and, burdened with these old beliefs, these subconscious beliefs that really can screw us up.
One has, I tell people, find your purpose because it makes you purposeful. And I believe it's designed, like you said, I believe that we get into a space where we are tested to see if we believe what we say. Because you had many times when you have the struggle, if you will. You keep putting in your time and you didn't see, as they teach us in corporate world, the ROI to your work that you were putting in and so forth. And,
Yes.
and so, but I believe because of uh, who we are tested to see, are you really sure you believe this? And when we say yes to that and we surrender to it, I believe the blessing, guys, is right beyond that confession that we make. Because the trap is that job to look back and see that the money is there, that security, that false security, if you will, that is trying to keep you from your purpose. And I love the fact that you guys got single minded and said, no, this is what we want. We are
Yeah.
going through.
Ken, the thing of this is that anybody in a body who's willing can get it. It's like it's
Yes.
just, coming to it because we all came into this world from the sexual act, and yet it's so
Yes.
vilified in the world. And I've
Mm-hmm.
found over the years we've been doing this and teaching this, and I've been studying it and we've been studying it, that when we bring our consciousness to the sexual, there's an intelligence that is part of our lineage, which is that creativity, it creates life, and that pleasure and that intimate vulnerability that happens in that space. And for
Yeah.
men in the tantric practices, it's imperative. One of the primary edicts is to learn to separate ejaculation from orgasm. And not so
Mm-hmm.
much for a lot of guys that come to the work, they want to be a better lover, or they've heard that there's something spiritual that happens, and everyone, most guys particularly, have had their orgasm where it's like a 3 second, drop back into the infinite, universe. But learning to expand that for an hour or as long as you want to be in that space is what's learned. And so in that process, a man learns to let go of the unconscious automatic proclivity that appears often to their beloved or their partner as lust or selfish love. Because for us guys, it's one of the few places that we are allowed to be intimately connected and vulnerable. Because most of us, we're kind of modeled and shown and socialized to have two emotions. That's fucking or fighting for guys.
Yep.
But to
Mm-hmm.
get that we can be intimately connected with ourselves and our heart and be seeing ourselves in the other is another level. And that's the integration of the yin yang process. That's really working with the polarity of balance and masculine and feminine. And that really goes a long way in terms of understanding yourself and the other, particularly in relationship with your female partner.
So Freddie, let me talk to you about this for a little while, and then we'll go to Elsbeth, because men have more of a, I would assume, that men have more of a problem, if you will, for lack of a better word, because of societal training and programming that, as you said, fighter, how can you assist? Because I know you've done it with so many. Walk with us, gentlemen, for a minute, because we have to understand this. Men have to understand that being vulnerable is one of the most strongest emotion. I mean, it is a good place to be. Men are afraid to become vulnerable, to become a man. I think you're not a complete man until you become vulnerable. When you get there, there's so much power and strength there. Talk to us, educate
And
us a little about that.
vulnerability is a subtle thing. So, like, say the father with the boy, and the boy is acting out and angry about something,
Yeah,
and if the boy is just angry, you didn't this or didn't that, you didn't come to my game, or whatever it might be. And the father, instead of going, well, grow up and be a man, or just ignoring him or getting angry or grounding him, might
yeah,
say, well, how would you like me to be? To be
yeah,
even to ask that question is a certain vulnerability. For the
yeah,
man to ask his son, how would you like it to be? Is a like taking the knee and saying, how would you like to be? Giving him
yeah.
control of how his own emotion. So that's a subtle thing, you know. So
Hmm.
once a guy starts to bring consciousness to this automatic proclivity that, you know, I've got an erection. Like, we work with many, for instance, couples that are in this peak of their sexual energy, and she's like, I don't know if you love me, if he loves me. And he's like, of course I love you. Look at me. And he's pointing to his erection, right?
Yeah,
So, and she's like, yeah, but can you kiss me with your heart? So
yeah,
when a man learns to move his energy from his second chakra, which is the sexual center, to his heart chakra, then he's starting to transcend this automatistic, proclivity to want to thrust and get to the orgasmic thing, which is great. There's nothing wrong with that at all. We're talking about bringing consciousness to this aspect of our beingness so that we can bathe in where those waters lead us in terms of that intimate vulnerability.
Yeah, so
yeah,
it's really essential to see here how the integration for a man of his sex and his heart that is at the very core of maturing into a mature man,
yeah,
where he can become more present to himself, and then out of that, more present to his partner, be this a woman partner or a man partner, it doesn't matter. It's the
yeah,
same principle. And that opens up vistas for the man that are not possible if he stays attached or just, with the awareness with his sexual center. The thing for men is, for most men, is that given that their sexual energy is based in testosterone, we call it uh,
Quick home.
the quick hormone.
yeah,
So if we look at male sexual energy rising quickly all the way up and then dropping quickly, unless like feminine sexual energy, and again, that doesn't just have to be a woman. It could be in a same-sex couple. It could, or transgender couple. It could be the one who is more in their yin self, in their
hmm,
feminine. As Freddy said earlier, with the polarity, any relationship, there needs to be yin and yang. If that is not there, there is no magnetism.
yeah,
So the one who is in their feminine energy, and most women that is so, is that the energy is based in estrogen, which is the slow hormone. So the energy hangs out. It doesn't come up quickly. We
yeah,
don't know if it's coming or going. However, when it's awakened, it can come up to a plateau and then stay on the plateau for a long time. Multiple
yeah,
orgasms, orgasmic waves, or just being in the ether of that orgasmic joy. So we can tell that these differences, these polarities are very, very different. One is quick and one is slow. The opportunity for the one who is in their feminine is to awaken the energy, because once we awaken it, it can sustain. For the other one who is more in their masculine or yang energy, it is to learn to sustain and circulate the energy.
Yeah.
And so then we can actually dance together as a pair, where the one in their masculine circulates their energy. And that is where what Freddy talked about, moving, breathing up the wonderful orgasmic aroused sensation from the sexual center into the heart center that opens the heart. And then the man becomes truly available to himself and to their partner. And then we can meet on the plateau that gives the woman or the one who is in their feminine room, space to trust, to receive, to awaken. And that is then where we can meet on the plateau and ride the wave together.
And that is a beautiful, beautiful imagery that a couple can achieve if they learn how to be patient with each other and have guides as yourself that will educate them as to how to go on that journey. That's beautiful, guys.
And, you know, Ken, in my men's workshop, one of the things that they learn between the first day and the second day is how to have a self-love practice, not just masturbation. And there's a particular ritual that you can employ that will allow one with themselves to move this energy to the heart and experience that same kind of movement and that same kind of intimate vulnerability of playing in that orgasmic nectar. And that's another level. Sexual meditation is something that should be taught to every guy, particularly in their puberty, so that they can learn how to get beyond the unconscious, automatistic, just to, you know, got to get it out, got to get, you know, I'm going to get blue balls or priapism or, you know, all of that. But to learn another level of really, you know, using that natural energy to drop into a deeper place of listening and being, because it's beyond the bedroom. Once you bring consciousness in the sexual arena, then the listening, once you're listening at that level with yourself, the way you listen to what you think, the way you listen to what people say, the way you listen to the sun on your skin, the way life just becomes brighter and more aware.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit. Sorry.
No, go ahead. I was about to tell how I became aware of mine. It's a strange story, guys. You're going to love this one, Freddy.
Okay. Yeah.
I was in my 20s and I was not circumcised. And I got in intercourse, the skin split, and I had to go to get circumcision as a grown man. And the physician told me, he says, whatever you do, you cannot have an orgasm, not an orgasm, you cannot get hard in the morning. And I remember as this man, the first day, because he said that the stitches would split and everything, it would be a mess and so forth. And I remember started doing some research, grabbing books about meditation to begin to, and so I knew before I would get up, a couple minutes before I started to have that erection, and I would start to meditate on bringing in meditation into my sexual organs. And I could not believe what was happening to me as a result of doing this. And I remember and I kept doing that for years until the first lady that I made love after that practice, sexuality was totally different, absolutely different for me.
That's
Where
beautiful.
that's how I became aware of meditation within the sexual organs and so forth, was because of a situation from a surgery that took place.
Where you've had to pay attention and focus, moving that energy. Yeah, that's great. That's a great story, Ken. Yeah. So you had your own discovery, and a lot of guys discover a lot of things that they can have, you know, orgasms in a flaccid state, you know, or orgasms without ejaculation, and they kind of stumble upon this. And this is something that can be cultivated as a meditation in practice, and it will enhance your mutual lovemaking when you have those moments. with yourself and with your partner. And more than that, you can use it to get beyond the story and belief that keeps us perpetuating oftentimes old stories that came from way back, because I call this remembering what we've forgotten. Because when we started out in the womb, it was womb service, we were floating and it was like effortless and we were being fed and our brains weren't totally developed. But all of a sudden we're born, whoosh, and we're, bright lights and whacked on the bottom. Some guys are getting their wee-wees cut and we're thinking, send me back, And then life happens, good days, bad days, sad days, and all these things that happen, the bullying and so on, and good things and so on. And then we get to a point in our life where we want to create something in our life that we've never had before. And that's the connection to this lineage of ours with this universe that goes on forever. We are the stars. We're all, I'm you, you're me. Biologically, I'm you, you're me. Chemically, we're Earth. And, atomically, we're the universe. It's all connected. There is a field that there's a part of us. And it's just the ego that thinks that we're not. So when we start tapping into this new possibility and then we do therapy and we figure out, oh, that's why we get the left brain going, then we look at how can we really make these actionable insights happen. And these are the practices to do that.
Yeah. So let's look at also for the listeners that, what are we talking about here when we speak about circulating, transmuting, sustaining that pleasure energy. So in the West, we collapse ejaculation and orgasm. They are not the same. So the ejaculation is actually induced by a reflex of a muscle in the pelvic floor. That muscle goes around the base of the penis or the lingam. Lingam is a Sanskrit term for penis, or actually directly translated, it means magic wand or wand of light. Much more endearing than, all kinds of words.
Dickhead.
Yeah. And so a man can learn to master that reflex, because when the reflex goes off, it's all in service of ejecting the ejaculate. And of course, when the ejaculate is gone, the energy is gone. So it's a huge depletion. Each ejaculation is a huge depletion for a man, depletion of his life force energy. Yeah. And so in the tantric practice, the man learns through pelvic floor muscle practice, through breath, to actually master that reflex so that it doesn't go off, because when it doesn't go off, he doesn't lose the energy. However, he doesn't want to keep that energy constricted in his sexual center. So he learns to use his breath to breathe up, to move that orgasmic feeling, that aroused feeling, up into his heart. So orgasm is a sensation. The ejaculation is a muscular reflex, and a man can learn to distinguish that. And then that allows him then to really ride on that orgasmic breath wave. And energy can only move with the breath. When we don't breathe, we die. It's rather obvious. So we can learn to employ the breath to actually assist us in moving energy throughout the body. Be that headache energy, we can move with the breath, out of us, or any other kind of pain energy. And so we also can move pleasure energy from one place to another. And that then allows to embellish the whole body. So that opens up the possibility for the man to experience multiple orgasms, whole body orgasms, what we call riding the wave, both by himself and really be in that orgasmic ether for however long he wishes to. And then, of course, can that allows him to become more connected and more present to his partner, to his beloved. Because when a man is no longer exclusively preoccupied with that strong testosterone lingam energy that is so wonderful, but it also can be really preoccupying. And when he learns to breathe it up into his heart and then ultimately into his third eye, that primarily in the heart, that opens him up. And when I feel that his heart is open, my heart opens. Most women, or the ones who are in their feminine, when they want to connect with their beloved, they start feeling it in their heart center.
Yeah.
Most men, when they want to connect, they start feeling it in their sexual center. So we both want to connect. We have the same intentions, but we come from different loci. He comes from his sexual center. I come from my heart center. So we are like two ships passing in the night. Through the tantric practice, the man learns to move up his wonderful energy, orgasmic lingam energy, into the heart. Heart opens. My heart opens. When my heart opens, my sexual center opens. In Sanskrit, the sexual center of a woman is called yoni, Y-O-N-I, and yoni means sacred space. So then my sacred space opens, and then my sacred space connects with his lingam energy, his wand energy. And then we have a circuit again from his wand into his heart, from his heart into my heart, from my heart into my yoni, my sexual center, and back into his lingam. So we have this big circuit that we can breathe through, that we can ride together. And that is where the sense of becoming one arises. When we breathe in and out together, circulate our wonderful energies with each other. That is where a sense of oneness between two people can arise.
That's absolutely powerful. I tell my I was talking to a friend of mine, and she was talking about some stuff going on with her boyfriend, and I told her, I said, the key to any relationship, if you will, is that one, you have to become naked with each other, naked in this sense, and your explanation of that nakedness is absolutely perfection, meaning that you are open everything, your energy, you are one with that person when you become naked. You identified with their energy, you're able to dance with it, you become powerful. And I told her, I said, you have to learn to strive to get there, to become naked before each other so that you can enjoy the benefits of one another. Here you guys are. You have done so much. I mean, I've been reading and looking at your work and listening to all of the different things. When you are together, in the sense, when you, in your growth, guys, because there are times when one is maybe, you're not sinking. How are you guys able to manage yourself in the sense that if you notice there's something, Freddie, and you need to get to Elsbeth to make her aware, because a lot of couples, uh, communication is key. How do you communicate with her?
Yeah, a good question, Ken. And what you were saying earlier about, couples and or the woman that your friend who was talking to you about her boyfriend, and you were saying to be unmasked. And that's not something we learn. As children, we're taught to hide our feelings because we get in trouble when we speak what we say, and we believe that we can't do what we want, and so on. So the process of continuing to raise ourselves as adults is an ongoing full court press. And these are the practices that allow us the capacity to be in the brilliance of that kind of awareness. As I was saying, when you bring the consciousness in the sexual state, which is the intelligence of that creativity and pleasure and intimate vulnerability, that becomes a listening. So the thoughts that we have and the practices that we do are the things that lead us to the yoga, the energetic yoga that lead us to that open vulnerability that we don't learn. We're just a Machiavellian world, we're hiding our thoughts, and, we're in our stories about what this is and that is. And we're creating the world from where we look into it from. So to shift where we look at the world is to shift where we look into the world from. So these practices are the practices that develop our capacity to be what we call a curious witness of ourselves. We're the clay of all the things that we've experienced, as I was saying earlier, and we look into the world from that place. But the good news is that we can have a thought, an imagination to recreate how we see the world and how we experience the world. That's a full court press to get out of our own way. So these are the practices that assist us in getting out of our own way just through the intelligence of what happens, whether you're doing consciousness work or not. Again, when we're in our sexual energy, we're more open, loving, vulnerable, receptive. Chemically, we're changed, more endorphins, serotonin, oxytocin, the feel-good hormones. We're in an altered state of consciousness. So again, when you bring consciousness there, it shows up everywhere. If it's anywhere, it's everywhere. That kind of deeper listening.
Also, let's just look at, because so much time of being in relationship is not necessarily in the sexual embrace, So we are working together, we are, teaching together, living together. There is a lot of time spent together, not necessarily always in the same physical space, but and so there is plenty of opportunity to trigger each other. Freddy does something I don't like, or
how could she? Oh my God, what is she thinking? One of the things, Ken, in relationship is learning to get out of the way of yourself and allow other to be totally who they are. Learning to do that is an ongoing process.
And so that's what I wanted to talk about. Go ahead, Elsbeth. Go ahead. Elsbeth,
how can we learn to move with the adversities? There are always adversities, situations that I would like to be different. There are ways I would like Freddy to be different, or to listen to me in a different way, or, to bring back from the grocery store the exact brand of butter I want and not anything else, and it can be a small incident or a bigger incident. Sometimes the trigger is the same, how it shows up then for me. So instead of going into a rage or into closing off, where I want to protect myself, or when I want to get back at him because I felt hurt. So out of my inner hurt, I then do that kind of revenge, like hurting him. That's not a conscious act. It's more like a reactivity. How can we, instead of moving there, stay open, stay present? And, there are wonderful tantric practices for the couple that we can learn and bring into our everyday life. So instead of then fighting with each other, making each other wrong, which is so easy to do in the moment, that we actually can have practices that allow us to breathe together instead of getting angry. Or when I get angry, I curb it and turn to the breath. So there is one particular practice we really like and we do frequently. So it may be a situation, where I'm just sitting in front of the computer, working.
Mm-hmm.
And then Freddy comes over to me. Do you want to?
Yeah. And what I might do is I'll put a hand at her heart in the center of her chest and in the center of her back, sort of creating a mudra. And I'm just holding here, and Elsbeth just stops what she's doing, and then we breathe together. A few breaths, just quieting the mind and dropping into the sensation of touch and breath. And it reminds us of what's just beneath all of the disconnect and the story and the static and the busy and the cha-cha mind.
Yeah.
And what's so beautiful about this practice is that by Freddy placing his hands on my chest in the front and between the shoulder blades in the back, he connects with my heart. And we also can look at the arms being an extension of the chest, and the chest is the home of the heart center, the center of love. So from his heart, through his arms and hands, he connects with my heart. And again, when we breathe together, and we have done this practice a lot, so we easily can drop into the synchronized breath. When we breathe together, we come into harmony. And when we connect heart to heart, we cannot stay angry. It's not possible.
When you commit to this touch and letting go of your mind, just beneath that is the stillness.
Yes. So it's a question of commitment, as Freddy says it, so that we have an agreement. And it doesn't work without the agreement for the couple. We have the agreement that when one comes to the other in that way, the other, the one who is being touched, drops everything. Now, of course, Freddy doesn't come over to me like this when I'm in the middle of a Zoom call, but when I'm working or just, pottering around, when he comes to me like that, I drop everything. And for a minute or so, for 2, 3, 4 breaths, I'm totally in the present moment, connecting with self and connecting with him. And it doesn't take a long time. What it does take is willingness to drop into it instead of, oh, why is he coming right now? And I'm so busy here. I don't have time. And, I'm nervous or I'm under pressure or I'm overwhelmed. That's the moment to shift into the heart. And then the recalibration really is not just beneficial for the moment, connecting with myself and with my beloved, harmonizing. It also carries over then to my work, into the next hour. So that is a practice we'd love to share, here, so that if you are in couplehood, that you can see new possibility for living in your relationship in harmony versus in discord.
That's why I asked that question, because here you are working. I envision you both in each other's space, but you have these moments, and I wanted the listeners to hear, because I knew you would give us and offer some tools. And those guys that are here, I told you guys, always listen to become a hearer. Powerful information they just shared about you being a couple and having that communication. It's verbal. It's also much more than that. It's a touch. It's a look. It's a moment. It's an agreement. And it's a powerful piece that you have to have, that agreement. I call it covenants. You make covenants with your mate. That is deep stuff, meaning that once you've made this covenant, it's back in the old days when kings made covenants. They took their hands off and they put them between the two men's private and held it. And that was something of high respect and honor. You could not break it. The only thing that broke a covenant was death. When you have a couple that behaves in such, the covenant is a touch. Covenant is an agreement. The covenant is breathing together. Power, guys. We're listening to power. So here you are. You guys are renowned, powerful, assisting others to see the greatness in themselves from the realm of sexuality. Because as Freddy said, in the culture, the Western, even the Western culture, the language that we use is so brutal. Dick, pussy, no respect for the beauty of that Elsbeth talked about with the language from a different culture. Beautiful energy that you guys are helping us to understand. What are your advice, Elsbeth, that you would give to a young woman struggling? I know that you have young mothers. There's lots of young women, single mother. Sexualness and all those things takes time. We devalue sexuality and sexualness and tantra stuff. We devalue it. What you guys are talking about is something precious. How do you speak to some of these young folks, adults, young adults that are mystified with this terminology, sexuality, and how to get them a little calmed down to begin their journey? And we are going to provide everything for you guys to get to them. You need to, because sexualness and sexuality is a part of your life until you die. And you will need to find that covenant partner, as they have shown us is a possibility. Elsbeth, talk to some of the young women out there today, and I'll have Freddy do the same for some of the men.
Yes, so for young women, actually for any woman, I would say make a covenant with yourself, because that is where everything emanates from. What just opened up here between Freddy and me really goes back to me being willing to be connected with myself. If I'm not connected with myself, I cannot connect with Freddy. So the connection with self, that covenant with myself, to be in harmony with myself, to drop into my heart and listen to my heart, instead perhaps listening to the outer world or what other people think I should be doing or not doing, so to really become self-referenced in the listening of what may be best for me, of what my path is about, instead of being externally referenced. We all are, to a great extent, externally referenced, because that is how we grow up. That is how we orient ourselves in the world and with our parents. However, growing up and maturing is all about listening to the agency within. And so for the young woman, I would say, connect with your heart. Just as Freddy came over and connected with my heart, I can just place one hand on my heart center or both hands on my heart center and breathe into my heart. And when I breathe into my heart expands, which means my heart energy, my love energy. And it expands first and foremost for myself. It also allows me to drop out of the busy mind, the chatter mind, the judgmental mind, the critical mind that we all live in. When I bring the focus, and each of you can just place both of your hands on your heart center and just take in a deep breath and feel how your heart opens into your hands. And stay with this breath for a few moments and notice how the energy of focus has shifted into your heart. Your focus now is on your heart center, on your love, versus assessing what's happening or what's not happening. What's happening that is when we are in the head. Yeah. And the heart energy is very different from the head energy. So connecting with my heart is really a great place to be, because there then once connected, I can ask, okay, Elsbeth, what is important to you at this very moment? What would you like?
Yeah.
What would my heart like? And the heart never lies. We just need to listen to her. And that is what I would pass on to women, and particularly young women, so that you can find what's true for you and follow your truth.
That is it, guys. I mean, I wanted to speak to the young women, as you said, or women, because a lot of them are lost, if you will. And the reason why they're lost, they allow men to come in and guide them and tell them all these things. But as Elsbeth says, one must become centered, a covenant with self first, because you are the most precious thing there is on this planet. And so, because you are that special, you're that unique, you ought to take the time to talk to yourself, encourage yourself, get to know who you are, get to drink of you. You are precious. So, Freddy, here you are. We are now talking to the young men because, as you said, you know how we are programmed and how we need to, because I have 5 sons, as I said, and I remember having some of these conversations with my sons and so forth. Help us, as those that are listening, to help redirect a young man as he's listening to us have this conversation as to the importance of him.
Yeah. So one, I would say cultivate the curious witness of yourself. Listen to the thoughts that you are running through your head as a way of getting an idea of yourself, because these things come from unconscious places. So to develop our witness and the curious witness of ourselves starts with the breath. So I would suggest, I would encourage your listeners, young listeners, old listeners, all genders too, to start to develop what we call the parasympathetic breathing. So the nose, trachea, lungs, and extending the diaphragm and belly. And for most of us, we can do that for about 3 breaths before our mind gets distracted, squirrel, whatever it might be. And as we continue to do that kind of breathing, we can begin to focus just on the breath and watch the thoughts without what we call the total felt sense of the thought. That's the first step. So that's the developing the witness state of mind.
Yeah. And this breath, actually, that Freddy speaks about, the conscious belly breath, is on our gift we are giving to the audience in that video class called The Introduction to Sexual Meditation. One of the practices is the conscious belly breath. So if you want to follow Freddy's advice and become more aware of yourself, go get that video class and learn how to do that practice that will allow you to drop into that witness state of mind that Freddy is speaking about.
And then once you get that, you can start to work with the subtleties of our sexual energy, of your sexual energy body. In our book, we mentioned a book that was written by a guy named Napoleon Hill in like the 40s. And his book was about getting people to shift their belief about being rich. And in his book, he mentions in one section, lucky is the man, it's a little patriarchal. We say lucky is the person who can learn to use her sexual energy. In his case, it was wealth. And he didn't tell you how to do it. We do. And it could be wealth or happiness or relationship or whatever else it might be. So developing that witness state of mind is developing the looking of ourselves, of where we look into the world from all the experiences that we've had. The good news, again, as I said many times here in this episode with Ken, is we have an idea, a belief, an inkling of something new that we've never done before. And it's continuing to believe that and work with our own thoughts and disbelief about what's possible to begin to move into the possibility and the creation of something that is uniquely you. Because once we're gone, you're gone, the world will never be the same. You're a unique diamond. So keep developing and uncovering and moving forward with your unique authenticity?
Yeah, tell them that they are one of a kind, that they're an endangered species. I tell people every single one of us are an endangered species. How we have industries that are making $1 billion on our uniqueness. My voice recognition, my eye recognition, my fingers. The whole police department is and law department is designed and developed because of our uniqueness. So once we leave, that's it. And so that's why I say to people, don't allow people to disrespect you, because you are only you. When you leave this universe, you're gone. You have gone, your fingerprint, your voice, you have gone. And so allow yourself the pleasure of getting to know who you are. You are such a beautiful, beautiful human being. And you ought to experience all aspects of life, as Freddie and Elsbeth was talking about. All of it, including learning about yourself, including learning about your sexuality, including learning about the breathing techniques. I always tell people the breath is the bridge between the natural and the supernatural. And you have to learn how to walk in between the different worlds as you take your breath. It puts you into a certain state. Elsbeth talks about Freddie coming, putting the hand in the chest, in the back by the shoulder blade, and began to breathe. It began to shift her state. And as she shifts her state, she shifts everything else also comes with it. So learn from the masters. I got me a couple of them right here. Guys, all of you that have been following us on this podcast, I'm going to provide everything for you guys to get in touch with both of these precious souls that came by and honor us with their presence. You need to get into their space. I'm going to provide everything. The holidays are coming. Relationships you guys have, New Year's stuff planning, I'm going to give you everything so you have access to them, because I want to hear stories from you guys about how Elsbeth and Freddy changed your life. You're single people, single women, single guys, couples. I want to hear stories, because this has been powerful, and I can't wait to get some more insight from them. I'm going to keep bothering them, guys. But I just want to thank you guys for coming to Threads of Enlightenment. So deepness from my heart.
Thank you, Ken, for having us on your platform.
Thank you.
It is my honor.